on his operation.
Okay,
So, Dr. Strauss?
Hello, can everybody hear me? I guess so, yeah. I'm Mark Strauss. I'm a veterinarian. I am not an academic. This is my first in history PowerPoint presentation, so I ask your forgiveness if it seems a little amateurish. Why am I here? Well, I've practiced veterinary medicine actually in Carroll County for 35 years, and I've had stocker cattle for pretty much all the last 30 years. And back in 2010, I just got tired of getting gains of 1.25 to 1.4 pounds per head per day on my stockers. I can't make any money at that. So I sat down with my extension agent, and the first thing that we did was we went ahead and tested my fescue for toxicity. Well, we found out that I had, on one of my farms, I had 90% toxic fescue, and the other farm, 100% toxic fescue in Carroll County. I've spent all morning, just about having whiplash, just agreeing with everything that's been said today about what the fescue does. So we sat down at my dining room table with Extension and the New River Soil Conservation Service and came up with a plan to change how I do my farms. It had all the regular facets. We were doing cross fencing, putting in waterers, fencing out the wood lots, and also changing the pastures. And I have planted Max Q. And it was a process. It took 3 years to do it on both farms, but this is the results that I've got in 2014. And they were so exciting to me that I wrote up a little something and I sent it to J.B. Daniel, and he asked me to come and share this with you. I did not do any kind of a field trial. This is by accident. This is by what I do on my farm to manage my cattle and how much of a difference it made. What I do in 2014, I ended up getting 50 head black-white face heifers in late April. They came in at 408. I processed them, vaccinated, dewormed, implanted, gate cut them into 2 groups of 25 each. And to turn out on the 2 farms that I had planted at that point with Max Q fescue and Patriot clover. Now, I don't know about everybody else, but there's no way I can stock my pastures in the springtime. I mean, you're going to outgrow the grass is going to outgrow the cattle. In the summertime, you're going to run out of grass. So I have a 3rd farm that when the grass gets short, I can take the cattle off and rest the farm for a couple weeks so that we don't harm the grass. Okay, so we're going to talk about the farms. Farm 1, it's a 30-acre farm in Woodlawn, Virginia, seeded in Max Q in the fall of 2011 and frost seeded with Patriot clover in March of 2013. It's all cross-fenced into 6 paddocks and has waterers. Farm number 2, 16 acres, seeded in Max Q in 2012, and frost seeded with Patriot clover in March of 2013 as well. Interestingly, it was recommended to me that you can't put out the clover the first winter after you plant your fescue, or the clover is going to outgrow the fescue. You're not going to get a good stand of fescue. Found out that isn't always the case. My best stand of grass have been where I've planted the Patriot just right away, 5 months after I've planted the Max Q. Farm number 3 in 2014 was 15 acres of native fescue that was also frost seeded, but with a more generic Ladino clover in March of 2013. I was really busy frost seeding in 2013 because I bought the fancy herd Cedar that's the only way to put down clover reliably. It had no cross fencing or natural watering sources. So what happened? Well, first, what am I trying to do? I already told you that I'm try to rest the main farms by putting them on what I call my rescue farm. Because the grass gets ahead of the cattle, I did take some hay off of the farms. That's a valuable resource to me because now I've got some hay that is off of novel endophyte pasture, so I don't have to worry about, recontaminating my pasture when I roll that down the hill. It amazed me how much difference 2 weeks of rest makes in August on a farm. It took a farm that, I started out, all my land is steep, and I started out with 7-day rotations early in the year, and I got down to 5 days, and they were just eating it up, and it's like, I got to get them off of here because I'm damaging my fescue. So just given that 2 weeks of rest in August, I was set for the rest of the season to put cattle back on the same land. As I alluded to earlier, I need to get 2 pounds per head per day for 180 days in order for me to break even or make a profit in cattle. So what happened? Okay, now this is where it gets a little technical, but I had on the Group A on the first farm, Farm 1, they gained 204 pounds in 92 days. That's 2.21 pounds per head per day. I reprocessed them, basically moved them from farm to farm, put a pour on for flies, re-implanted them, moved them to farm number 3, which is my rescue farm, and left them there from July 28th to September 3rd. It was easy to remember, moved them on my birthday, took them off on Labor Day. Those 25 cattle lost 4 pounds in 5 weeks on that native fescue grass. They stayed full, they looked good, they had slick haircoats because they hadn't retained a haircoat. They were full all the time. When they said, the gut slows down, those cattle were packed, but they weren't gaining any weight at all. Look what happened when I took them off on Labor Day and put them on Farm 2, which had been rested, because I also moved those cattle. Those cattle gained 157 pounds in 51 days. They gained over 3 pounds per day from September 33rd to October 21st. Over the 179-day grazing season, they gained 1.99 pounds. Pretty much what my goal was. Group B, they started out on farm number 2. They were doing really well. They gained 240 pounds in 114 days, which is 2.1 pounds per head per day. Now this is a smaller farm. I had 25 head on 16 acres of grass, but it's the best stand I have. It was getting short, so they got moved in the middle of August the 18th, and put back on the first farm that I'd taken the cattle off of on July 28th. So that farm had that 3-week rest, and then they were rotated through that. Well, those cattle for the 64 days gained 2.48 pounds per head per day in the fall part of the season. Over the 179 days, they gained 2.21 pounds per head per day over the whole grazing season. Best I've ever done. Of course, 2014 was an incredible year. If we didn't make money in the cattle business in 2014, we need to go sit on the porch. But this was not really a design study, but it actually has pretty good controls. Because the biggest difference between the two groups were that Group A spent 5 weeks on infected fescue. They didn't gain as well over the whole season, but the time that they were on the novel endophyte fescue, those cattle performed excellent. Not only did they perform well, but I was amazed at how they rebounded after I took them off of that native fescue. Those cattle gained over 3 pounds a day. They made up some of the lost ground. It makes me feel that, and that's why I'm wagging my head so much over this morning's work. It's that summertime grass that was just terrible. I mean, the July and August, just the worst time in the world for the summer slump. And I was doing all that stuff to manage that fescue. I had clipped I'd clipped farm 3, taken the hay off of it. Let it grow back for 3 weeks. It had already had clover put in it. It was 100% vegetative. Went around the edges with the bush hog, made sure there was no seed heads. I thought I was doing pretty good. And those cattle lost weight on that farm. What I decided was that in those 5 weeks on that native fescue, those 25 cattle lost 77 pounds in potential gain. And that's 2.2 pounds times 35 days. Plus, they actually lost 4 pounds. So they lost 81 pounds of potential gain in that 5 weeks. Well, at $2.05 a centerweight, 100 pounds, that's $4,100 that I figure I lost by putting them on that farm. That was enough. That's enough to pay to renovate that 16 acres. All the cost of renovating it. So that's pretty much exactly what I did. Now let me just show a few pictures. This is what I like to have the pasture look like when the cattle go on it for their rotation. And I don't know about you, I like to get a pair of scissors and a bowl and get a little salad dressing, and that's pretty good stuff as far as I'm concerned. This is actually where I had to run over it a lot with the road. This stuff is tough, not just the fescue, but I think the Patriot clover's been excellent. It takes a lot of beating and comes back really well. Just another close-up. This is actually the farm that I reseeded. This is early spring, and you certainly see the lines where my fescue is. What I love is the way the clover just fills in all the space on this farm. And I put zero nitrogen down except what comes in the DAP. And I did fertilize totally by the recommendations. Cost a fortune, but boy, we had the grass. Just another picture of the lines of fescue with all the good Patriot clover growing up in it. This is on farm 3. Still had natural water source. Not a good idea. That's being changed this year. So what did I do this year? Okay, now I've converted all 3 farms. I am one of those farms now that has no native fescue. Got 61 head of black and black white face heifers at $398. Gate cut them into 2 groups. 35 head went on the bigger farm, and 26 head went on the smaller farm. Let me see if I can find the pointer here. Okay. Just like before, I'm just going to talk about Group A here for a minute. They were on Farm 1 from April 21st to August 3rd, gained 1.9 pounds per head per day. Then they went on Farm 3, which is the farm they lost weight on last year. In 2014. They gained 1.83 pounds per head while they were on that in August and September. And then they went back to farm number 1 from September 14th to October 30th and gained 2.33 pounds per head per day, for a total gain of 1.98 pounds per head per day for the whole season. Not quite my goal, but pretty darn close. The reason we're not going to talk too much about Group B, they were one of those groups that's a management headache. Had a few high-headed heifers in that group. It was the kind of group that if you walked out they just all scattered. They were jumping over high tensile fences. You'd put feed out for them. You'd have to walk to the house before they would go up in the lot, and if you stepped out on the front porch, they all busted out of the lot like they were crazy. None of you have ever had a group of cattle like that, I'm sure. But this just proved to me that nervous cattle just don't gain very well. I never could take them off that farm because my other farms, I didn't have a way to set a mouse trap to catch them in the lot. If I drove a car up, if I drove a truck up to try and close the gate, all the cattle would be gone. But I had a way figured on the farm that's at my house that I could sneak out on the back deck of the house and pull the gate to the lot shut. And when I did, it was like a whirling dervish, those cattle going around in circles because they were just nuts. But they never did do as well, but they did end up gaining 1.71 pounds per head per day, just rotating that 26, rotating through a 16-acre farm. Again, the cattle didn't perform as well. Part of it was due to the personality of the herd. I think the key point is that the farm that they lost weight on native fescue, they gained 1.83 pounds on that exact same land in 2015. The cattle price took a terrible hit. You all might have sold before it, but I was right in the middle of it. The difference that the Max Q and the Patriot Clover made to me was I was able to pay some of the bills on the farm rather than selling $1,100 a head calves back at the end of the year for $1,100. I was actually able to pay some of the bills. Just a few pictures of fairly happy calves grazing one of the paddocks. I was told I had to put pictures in, so I just had to take a few pictures there. Really, a lot of talk's been said today about the biggest reason that people don't do this is the cost, it's the expense, it's the not being able to get started, to put that first foot forward. I would have never done this if it wasn't for the Virginia Cooperative Extension Service and the New River Valley Conservation Service, who assisted with the forage establishment, it's part of the whole package deal. And unless you get somebody to start pushing you a little bit, you're not going to do it. They gave you the financial help to get it started. But now that I've done it, the question is, how can you afford not to do it? They were talking about mitigation things this morning. Mitigation is an annual expense. How long are you going to put up with the mitigation expense? I thought I was doing a pretty good job of mitigating. I wasn't doing squat. The only good way to deal with Kentucky 31, and this is going to sting, is to get rid of it. I'm sorry. You can't afford to lose a half a pound a day or more dealing with native fescue. It's hard enough to make money on these cattle. Pennington Seed, really great products. I mean, I'm not doing an advertising for them. They've never paid me a penny, but they had some good products and some good advice, although I'll be glad to talk to them about that later. If it's fine, I couldn't do all my farms the same year. And the question came up, what do you do while you're doing it? Well, I'm a stocker person. It's maybe a little easier for me than a cow-calf person. The 2 years that I was doing this, instead of buying enough to make a truckload, my goal was to make 50,000 pounds of cattle every fall so that I can either sell them local or put them on the tail auction. Well, the years that I was doing this, I was only able to get 25 one year and 40 the next year. I didn't buy as many cattle so that I could match it to the amount of land I had available. Go ahead and do all the fertilizing with DAP and phosphate that you need to, because I was able to put cattle on fairly newly established fescue and Patriot Clover and not hurt it as long as I had a place to go, as long as I could get them off when things were getting short. And I'm lucky because there happens to be a log yard that's right between my 3 farms, and they happen to have a scale there, and he happens to let me use it. So a lot of the weights you're seeing here, yeah, I weighed them, but they were weighed on the trailer in the truck. It's a non-certified scale. There may be a margin of error there. But these differences are significant differences. These are not, gee, I did a sloppy job of it, you know, because it was incredible, the difference. And it's really nice to see 100% of the cattle slick and pretty and not have those dozen that would fail the T-snip test that have that brownish black hair coat that are 75 to 100 pounds less when you weigh them. You know, I don't have that now. So I guess I'm a firm believer. I've been taken in the fold here of what everybody's talking about here about, you know, mitigate while you have to, but you need to replace it. You need to replace it with a novel endophyte. My goals for this coming year are really going to be, well, don't have that on here, but it's in the little write-up I did. My goals for this year are, now that I've got everything cross-fenced and everything, get rid of the natural water on the one farm. But my oldest field of Max Q is 5 years, going in its 6th years. I think we're going to start doing some testing. I've talked to the Pennington people, and I'm going to start testing toxicity level. I'm going to see how much recontamination I'm getting after 6 years. I'm really interested to see how persistent this is. Because if I get back to that 500 parts per billion on one of these farms, it's going out of service and going to get replanted. There's no question. I can't afford not to replant it. And you know, you got to get a plan that works for you. But even if you're doing portions of it at a time, I'd really at least try it. You know, the conservation cedars are out there and available to use. We're too steep to put in an annual. I don't have the equipment to harvest an annual. You know, I just did the kill it, plant it, re-kill it, you know, put glyphosate down when I planted it. And I've gotten good stands. Do have to work on weeds just a little bit, but overall, when you're grazing it, when you have a high grazing rate and you're going ahead and rotating it, I don't have that much trouble with weeds. Now, that's about all I have to say. Questions or thoughts or disprove me?
You got any questions for Mark? Right there in front.
You take your clover, did it come pre-inoculated?
Yes, it's all, and that's one of the first things I ask. And they say everything. They say all of theirs is pre-inoculated. Yes, sir.
You just broadcast it?
Yes, broadcast it. I'm probably the last person that doesn't have a 4-wheeler, so I actually bought the herd Cedar to go behind the tractor, which is really nice in March with the cab and the 4-wheel drive. It don't matter. Just go in there March and or 1st of March and do it. And on which? The Patriot? Patriot was 3 pounds per acre, and that's the kind of stand you get with 3 pounds per acre of Patriot. And I was supposed to be 20 pounds per acre on the Max Q. The big problem is they set it at that, and you get done your 15 acres and you find out you probably, well, twice I ran out of seed before I ran out of land because the cedar wasn't set right, and once I had to go over it again because I didn't put out near enough. Anything else? Thank you very much.